Brothers and sisters, friends, and I see some enemies.
With all due respect, you're such a fantastic moron. It's terrifying. What are you talking about? It's so painful. It's so painful to listen to this idiocy. Please stop displaying your imbecility. Don't put on public display that you're a moron. At least have the self-possession to shut up.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of my podcast, 20 Hertz. What is 20 Hertz, you might wonder? Well, 20 Hertz is generally the lowest frequency detectable by the human ear. So the whole idea of calling the podcast 20 Hertz is that in order to hear or understand what's really going on, you got to be quiet, you got to put your ear to the ground, you got to listen for those bass notes, lower than the bass notes, 20 Hertz. Let me know what you think. I'm going with it, you know. Why am I starting a podcast? Well, everybody and their mother has a podcast. Why can't I have one? You have a problem with it? I don't know what to tell you. Change the channel. No, but seriously, welcome. Thanks for checking in. If you didn't see episode 1, interview with Paul Lewis Street, please check that out. I'm going to be adding more videos, I promise, as I continue to move forward here. But in episode 2 here, what I really want to discuss is the erasure of Palestinian people in ways subtle and not so subtle. So in a massive genocide like we're seeing today, where the Lancet just the other day came out with a report that estimated close to 190,000 Gazans being killed so far in the first 9 months of this slaughter, this genocide. I want to kind of relate to my story, not to make this about me, but to share as someone who was raised in a Zionist family with Judaism, somebody who was from birth raised not knowing there was any sort of difference or daylight between Zionism and Judaism. I didn't, like most Jews, didn't know that there was a difference. I just knew that I was Jewish, which was different from most of the other kids, and that Israel. Everything was about Israel. Every summer there was a walk with Israel. There was selling. Doing charity work to plant trees in Israel, which turns out to be, a form of ecocide, basically. We'll get to that in a later episode. But as someone who grew up in this, and, my parents were liberal, basically, normal suburban family. But I want to talk about all the insidious, very subtle ways that Palestinian people are erased from memory, from the present. So again, we see this wholesale slaughter, just in my opinion, the worst massacre of this century, at least. But the way that Israel has responded to October 7th by starving bombing the crap out of women and children and men and elderly and everybody in society, and carrying out a genocide. This is the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. And since this started, this last round here on October 7th, although as I'll get into it, I'll tell you that I've been anti-Zionist for many years, about 40 years. So I'm going to explain how I came to that point. And so that is what I'm going to get into today. Now, I don't have a producer on my podcast, so it's all me. So it's low budge, and it's kind of DIY and punk rock. So just expect that type of presentation. So, my bar mitzvah and genocide. You might say, Ted, how did your bar mitzvah cause genocide? And I might say to you, you know, that is a very interesting, intriguing question. So I'm going to get into it. Like I said, I was raised Jewish. I went to Sunday school every Sunday from the time I was probably preschool age until I was 15, and I was confirmed from my Jewish education. I had a bar mitzvah when I was just about a week or two short of my 13th birthday. And I never took to religion. I never took to Judaism. I never believed in God. I never, first of all, I never believed the tales, from the Bible about Noah and the burning bush. And I just, even as a 5-year-old, I was felt like, come on, this is some bullshit. And then as I grew a little bit older, I started to learn these lessons. And when I say older, I mean, like 10, 11, 12 years old. And at that time, this would have been around in the mid to late 70s. There was some TV miniseries. It was a big thing back then. It was a new thing. They didn't have, these epic multi-episode series before that so much. So Roots was a huge cultural experience. The TV production of Roots, Alex Haley's book, for those who are younger and aren't familiar with it, it really caused a sensation in society. In fact, as school kids, we were required to watch Roots every night that it was on. And I grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood in south suburbs of Chicago. And what was different about my little subdivision was that it was created after the Civil Rights Act, 1965. So the neighborhood was integrated, and it was very multicultural. So this was around 1976, 75. I went to kindergarten. So you get the idea. I'm an old fucker. Generation X. Oh, by the way, there's going to be swearing on this podcast. I'm sorry. So, if you need to, if I might need to get Rachel Maddow on here to give a warning, to tell you to put your kids in the other room or give them earmuffs, what have you. But it's my podcast, so I'm going to fucking swear, Fuck this shit. So anyway, I grew up in a neighborhood that was multicultural. And now as an adult, many years later, I'm grateful for that. Although I hated the suburbs. I wanted to be in a city. At any rate, I did not have a choice to go to Hebrew school. That was required. And my parents, it was not negotiable with my parents. I had other friends that they said, Mom, I want to stay home and watch Speed Racer. And their mom was like, okay, you can do that. Not my parents, And every Sunday in Hebrew school, every Tuesday and Thursday for a couple, 2, 3, 4 years. So when you put it all together, it's at least 3 days a week in temple. Then in the summer, I went to summer camp, JCC day camp, and which happened, just coincidentally, to take place at the temple on the property. So here's the picture, and you can see me just over my shoulder here, right there in the black hat. That was a White Sox hat, and they told us, turn your hats around so you can see your faces, which I did. So Jewish day camp, some people watching this might be in this picture. I'm not going to name any names, but you can see the Jufros of the teenage and older counselors in the back. This proves that I was raised Jewish. I had a bris. My great-grandfather was killed in the Holocaust. Many of my relatives were killed in the Holocaust. I check off all the Jew marks, okay? So you're going to start trying to accuse me of being anti-Semitic or self-hating Jew and blah, 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 blah. Like I said, I'll get to that in one of the upcoming episodes. I'm not even going to bother with that. I'm not self-hating. I'm also not Jewish because I don't believe in God, but that's also a side note at the moment. Now, as I get to my bar mitzvah, I find out that as I'm studying for it, that there's this new program, and it's a Refusnik program, which is what they were calling Jews in the Soviet Union that were having their right to practice religion was being curtailed, and they couldn't practice openly. This is what I was being told, and I think there's some truth to it. But I think it was really played up. Became a very big political thing, and trying to get Jews out of the Soviet Union and into Israel. And the Soviet Union at the time was not allowing that to happen. There's different reasons why, and you can look into that if you want to, Google search Refusnik, Soviet Jews. You will probably, be able to find some material on that. But again, I don't want to get deep into the reasons behind that. However, they did pair me up with another kid my age in, I think in St. Petersburg. And I never talked to him. We didn't have, this is before the internet, before cell phones. So we would have been calling him on a landline to the Soviet Union, which it didn't happen. But there was some communication back and forth, probably through this program, through the temple. And we were around the same age, and they had us study the same Torah portion and the same Haftorah portion. And we ended up having our bar mitzvahs on the same day. I had mine at the temple. It was a big extravaganza like they usually are. And he had his at home. And so let me show you the picture here. Here's me with my a little more hair and a lot more hairspray. I remember the stylist, just because my hair was not straight. It's curly if I grow it out. At any rate, here's me standing at the door of the temple with the sign that my mom made with the boy's name, Efim Kelman. So that was him. So, I was told this story about how, again, Jews are the victims. They're persecuted like they were, throughout history in Russia. But in this whole education, from the time I was, again, 3 years old, the word Palestinian never was brought up. It was never mentioned. All we knew about was Israel. If someone's telling you, you're 3 years old and all you're learning about is Israel, and then your parents are telling you that if anything ever happens, you can go to Israel and you'll be safe, and there's no mention of indigenous people or Palestinian people. So that's really the reason why I'm doing this episode, because no one really knows about this. Who knows about this? So they should have been telling. It's a very subtle, insidious program, and there's so many of these things that happen in the Jewish community that just completely erase Palestinians. And if you look in the history, after the Nakba and during the Nakba in 1948, it started in 1947, but primarily 1948, and with the destruction and the ethnic cleansing of hundreds of Palestinian villages, the historian Ilan Pappé refers to it as memoricide, which was just this massive wiping out of any trace of Palestinians, So when the Palestinian people left their homes because of whatever reason it was in each particular circumstance, maybe they heard about Deir Yassin and they were afraid, and they heard a rumor that the Irgun or Haganah, the Israeli forces, were coming to their village. The villagers cleared out and they left, and they plan on coming back, once the hostilities died down. Who leaves their home? It's your home. You do everything to build your home, to create a home, to someplace where you can go and lay your head down and raise your children and cook your food and be sick and do everything you need to do and bathe. Who gets up and leaves their home and doesn't want it anymore? So anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's the narrative that you'll still hear from Zionists today. That Palestinians first of all, there are no Palestinians. Second of all, they left on their own volition, or they lost. Just too bad, So as a 12-year-old going on 13, I would have liked to have known the facts of what was going on, what these adults were putting me into and setting me up for, which really leads to directly to the ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinians. The end result of this, and there you can see me at the drum set. That's one of the things that stuck with me was playing the drums. So I had started when I was about this bad boy up there a little bit. I had started when I was 9 or 10, and so here I was 13. My teacher played at my bar mitzvah, and I sat on her kit. This is a beautiful sonar kit. Everyone who sees this these days says, "Man, what happened to that kit?" I said, "I don't know. It was my teacher's kit." But anyway, that was really my first public performance. So I'm still playing. This was 1982, so you do the math. So the thing that happened is that these Jewish people in Russia, eventually a lot of them got out, and they were able to get to Israel and stay there. And it just so turns out that group of people became one of the biggest blocks of far right-wing fascist settlers in the West Bank. They have wreaked so much havoc, and there's just a lot of these Refusniks that came, their parents, and parents came that had their kids in Israel. And these families are some of the most rabid, racist, ultra bigoted Zionists on the planet. So that's pretty much, my story up until the time I get to around the time I was confirmed. Confirmation is just sort of a graduation of your religious studies, Sunday school. By the way, this is Reform Judaism. This is not conservative or Orthodox. We didn't keep kosher. Just kind of like liberal Zionist, basically, which is also another topic to dig into, but not today. So I was becoming more and more aware of the world as I grew each year, 13, 14. By the time I was 15 years old, I was listening to a lot of music from around the world. I was starting to listen to reggae music, Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Steel Pulse, Black Uhuru. I was starting to listen to jazz. I was listening to Sonny Rollins' Freedom Suite. And that eventually led me to Max Roach's We Insist Freedom Now suite. And a lot of punk rock, actually, at the time. I started listening to punk rock music, and there was a lot of fanzines with, if people aren't familiar, but basically homemade newspaper magazines. And at that time in the 80s, in the mid 80s, again, before the internet, we had fanzines were really a important way for the youth to get their news and get their information and find out about basically alternative culture out there, what was happening, and get these opinions and viewpoints from the far radical left, anarchists, different political trends. So I was getting very much intrigued by the music and also what was going on in the world. I do remember 1982 being in Sunday school, and the TV was on, and the U.S. Marines barrack was blown up. All I knew was, like as a kid, the U.S. Marines were attacked, and this was after, again, the Iran hostage, so-called Iran hostage crisis of 1979. So there was a lot of anti-Arab sentiment out there. There was a lot of hatred, and I didn't know what to make of it, really. I mean, I was 10 years old. But it did not feel comfortable to me. It rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't know what was going on, but I didn't like it. For example, they were selling Ayatollah dartboards at the malls back then. What did people here know about the Shah and what had happened in Iran and the way that he ran that country, and the U.S. and the CIA assassination of Mossadegh, and the influence of Standard Oil and imperialism, and what that led to the masses of people in Iran? What did people here know about that? Nothing. What did kids know about it? Clearly nothing. So this, to me, was really the very beginning of this ultra jingoistic USA, USA. That's when people started chanting in that era at the Olympic hockey game, the U.S. versus Soviet Union. It was just after this whole thing with Iran and all of this Islamophobia, and now people are starting to chant USA, USA. And as a kid, it kind of scared the hell out of me, because I had learned about the Holocaust, and that's one thing about my Jewish education that, really stuck with me, was learning about the Warsaw Ghetto, because it puts you in this, you wonder, what would I do, if I was in the ghetto and I knew I was going to die and I was facing Nazis, would I fight? Would I try to organize? Would I go underground? Would we build tunnels? These are questions as a kid that I ran through my head, and I was taught a sense of right and wrong. But what happened was I looked out around me at the people who were teaching me this, and they didn't seem to be following their own teachings. And like I said, I was becoming more aware of what was happening to black people in this country. Of course, Native people as well, and all people of color, really. But, my school was not all white kids. We had, like I said, it was multicultural and maybe mostly white, but, kids of all, not all, but many different cultures and ethnicities. And I felt empathy for other kids and other people, and I was interested. And when I went to friends' houses with different cultures, the house smelled different. The magazines that were on the tables were different. The furniture was a different style. Everything was different, and I liked that. I didn't think about it that much, but it didn't bother me. I liked it. I like going to my friend's house and picking up Jet magazine. I'd never seen Jet magazine or Ebony. I thought that was, it was just different. It was cool. So, becoming more aware of the world, and that led me to figuring out what was going on in South Africa. Also, just through the music, a lot of the reggae music that was coming out was mentioning South Africa or Rhodesia or Angola, and I was getting interested in, what's going on? Also, Nicaragua was in the news all the time, and Reagan was president and there was a covert war going on with the Contra rebels that the U.S. was carrying out illegally. And this became a huge scandal, as most of you would know, the Iran-Contra scandal. And I started to put the pieces together, and I started to look at what was going on in South Africa and who was behind it. Okay, if all these artists are doing, they did a video called Ain't Gonna Play Sun City, and all these artists got together, Steve Van Zandt and a bunch of other people, Miles Davis, just one of those celebrity videos, and they said, we're not going to go to South Africa and play Sun City, which was a resort, a well-known resort where a lot of artists played. So they were taking a stand saying, we're not going to travel there, we're not going to play. That was an important moment, very important moment culturally and, just internationally for the anti-apartheid movement. And I was very much into that. I liked the tune. There was also a song called Free Nelson Mandela that I believe it was the Specials, one of the British groups, did, and I heard that, and I started learning about Nelson Mandela, and I started reading about Steve Biko and political consciousness movement, and I've been always interested in world history and geography and different cultures and music, and I wanted to know what was going on here because there was injustice, and I had been raised in Temple to look out for genocide, look out for racism, look out for scapegoating, making people wear a yellow star or making people live in a ghetto and rounding them up and putting them in train cars and gassing them. Okay, so I was vigilant about this stuff. I wanted to know what was going on. What I found out was that at each of these corrupt, just brutal regimes, South Africa, who's backing them? Israel, the United States. Guatemala, death squads, who's backing them, sending them weapons? Israel. Nicaragua, all throughout Central America. So I'm aligning myself with these freedom movements and revolutionary movements for justice. And I'm finding out on the other side is Israel. Well, that just didn't really make sense, but in a way it did, because like I said, I had this feeling like something's off here, because they talk at one game and then these people aren't interested in that. I'm looking at my parents' friends and, yes, there's some nice people and everything, but the community at large it's very insular. It's very about Judaism, and everything is about, sure, you go to school and you're friends with everybody. We're normal kind of secular people. But within that, it's all about Israel. And people like my sister, she really took to it her whole life. So, if you're taught that Israel is, and supporting Israel is the most important thing, and your Judaism and your religion is so important, and it's so important to embrace it and celebrate it, and, no, I don't have a problem with all this stuff, okay? But when it's Zionism and what your actions are doing is erasing another people, cleansing them from their land, committing genocide, and creating a system of apartheid. These are not just buzzwords. These are actual legal terms. Apartheid is a legally defined term that describes the separateness, the separate and unequal nature of a system like South Africa or Jim Crow South in the United States. Let's not forget, until 1965, the United States was not a democracy. If you want to call it that today, I wouldn't call it that, but if you're going to call it that, you can't call it before a democracy, before all of its citizens had the right to vote. And that didn't happen in 1776, that happened in 1965. So if you go along with this program, Judaism, Zionism, which is most people, they're going to fall in line, and any sort of thing that you're involved in, you have masses of people. The vast majority of them are going to conform and go along with the program. We know that. So, there's a machine here. There's a system. There's an ideology that's indoctrinating and cranking out young Zionists. That's what these birthright trips, and all these different ways to get involved with the IDF and Israel. Oh, it's so cool. I didn't want to go to Israel. I mean, my mom told me one time when I was about 3 years old, not 3 years, I'm sorry, I was about third grade, and that's when she told me that, if you're ever in trouble and there's ever problems, you can always go to Israel and you're automatically a citizen. And that's just didn't really make sense to me. First of all, I don't want to go to Israel. And why would I be a citizen? I didn't get it. And that's before I knew about Palestinian people. I still don't know about Palestinian people. So, I got to graduated. I got confirmed, and the deal with my parents was that once I got confirmed, you can do whatever you want. And so I couldn't wait for that day. And that was the end of my religious education. I'm an atheist. I'm a communist. Not interested in religion. I have most of my friends, most of the people I love, most of the people I'm close to are religious. They have religion. They believe in God. I don't. I'm not afraid to say there is no God. I'm not going to just go around, knock on your door and try to, ruin your day. But if we're going to debate it and we're going to get into it, I agree with Marx that religion is the opiate of the masses. However, if you buy into it, like my sister did, then it's really just a matter of how good are you at it. Are you one of these go-getters, like a teacher's pet and at the top of the class, just a real go-getter and leader and doing everything for Israel? And that's the kind of person my sister is, and that's the kind of person she created with her child, who became a AIPAC representative. So let me just step back a minute again. Well, let me finish that point, which is that even someone like my sister is growing up. I don't think she saw herself as a Zionist. Again, it's just so conflated that I think that's an important thing for people to understand who aren't Jewish and are anti-Zionist, that when Jewish Zionists freak out when you challenge their narrative, you've seen it. You've seen videos. You see it at demonstrations all over the place where they're just like, what are you talking about? It looks like their head's going to spin around, pop up, because you're not told the other side. They think they know everything. The Zionists, they think they're comeback all the time is, you don't know the whole story. You don't know because you've been taught your whole life. You've been taught, here's the story, here's the story, here's what happened, and we're the victims, the Holocaust and Israel and the Holocaust. And then someone comes around and says, no, you're colonizers, you massacred and genocide people, and you launch illegal wars of aggression and steal land, and then you occupy it and you don't give it back. And they're thinking, what are you talking about? So it's just this horrible disconnect. And, excuse me, you have a whole society just out of their minds, a whole nation of people in Israel just absolutely deranged and divorced from reality, detached. And they're 100% convinced that what they're saying is the truth, that they're on the right side, that they are the victims, but they're full of shit. So I'm not going to stand back and be quiet. See, so as I started learning about what was going on in the world, I just broke with it, and then I heard that there was such a thing as Zionism. In fact, I heard a quote from Bob Avakian, who said that after the Holocaust, the worst thing to happen to the Jewish people was the state of Israel. And the first time I heard that, it I wanted to be cool, like, oh yeah, I'm cool with that. But it just, as being raised Jewish, it makes your hackles come up. You feel like, oh, that's anti-Semitic, But when I thought about it, it made sense. Oh, this is how this beautiful, wonderful, perfect, Shangri-La land is backing the worst, racist, vicious, brutal governments around the world. I said I want no part of that. And it really kind of came clear to me, like, what this whole indoctrination and program was about. So I started to learn. I went to college, went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And maybe in the first month or so that I was there, I went to a used bookstore. People are familiar with Boston, or friends of mine that went to school with are listening to this. You might remember Victor Hugo Books on Newbury Street. So I popped in there and I started looking around, and I found this book about the Israeli aggression on the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza, which I had never heard anything about. In Sunday school, we had a timeline across the top of the school classroom, and it was dates from whatever year BCE all the way up to the present time, at least up through the 1970 Yom Kippur War. So I would be so bored in class, I'd look up that timeline. So I remember always seeing Six-Day War, but I never heard of this war, this aggression as they called it. So anyway, I pulled out this book that you're seeing here, and it really just blew my mind. It kind of, even though I was learning about Zionism, I didn't know really what was going on. And when I came home, actually for one of the first times from school, well, let me get to that in a minute. But anyway, this book was really kind of changed my life, because you'll see in it that they don't refer to their enemy as Zionists at this point. They call them Jews. And again, that when you're raised Jewish, you have this censor to, like, go into fight or flight mode. And even at that time, I still felt like, oh, they're talking about Jews, and I'm a Jew, so they don't like me. Sort of that kind of thought in my head. And as I started thumbing through this book, and I see these pictures, and it really made me mad. And it really became clear to me that I'd been lied to. Why didn't I know about any of this? And we had been lied to about what was going on in Lebanon at the time. And from there on out, I knew the truth and of what, really what the history was. Because like what I was just about to say was that at this time, when I was a first semester in college, 1987, and the first Intifada was breaking out. And so I was coming to consciousness about all this stuff. I was actually becoming a revolutionary, although I didn't know it yet. And now this uprising starts in Palestine. And I'm looking at this, and I'm starting to see footage and news coming out of Palestine and Gaza and the West Bank. And it just seemed so clear to me, I saw stuff like this. And if you're listening, it is some archival news footage of youth in Palestine, the West Bank, with going up against Israeli soldiers with looks like a sniper rifle, tanks, and now the youth are throwing stones at the tank. And this was before Tiananmen Square. And when I saw this, I said, okay, we have on one side little boys with rocks and slingshots, and on the other side we have tanks and Uzis. Which side are you on? I'm on the side of the masses. I'm on the side of the oppressed people. I'm on the side of the kids. I'm not on the side of the tanks. I don't care if they're Jewish. I don't care what religion they are. And this occupation, now already, 1987, how many years ago? My math is bad. 37? This occupation has been going on since the Beatles put out Sgt. Pepper's. And Israelis want to just, over the course of decades, they think, oh, well, out of sight, out of mind. It's not our problem anymore. They think they don't even acknowledge the occupation. That's how delusional, deranged, and sick they are. That they're carrying out this brutal military torture regime. Murdering, torturing, and now genocide on a massive scale. And I wanted no part of it, and I still want no part of it. And I'm going to use my voice as someone who came up, and I know Judaism, I know the culture, and I know what Zionism is, and they are not the same. And so if you're staying quiet because you don't want to step in something, you don't want to say the wrong thing, you don't want to be accused of being anti-Semitic, I give you permission to speak out against Zionism, okay? Just tell him, hey, Ted was Jewish, he's not anymore. And he said it's okay. He had a bar mitzvah. Actually, Ted went to JCC summer camp, and he said that Zionism is not Judaism. But really, let's get into, I'm not going to get deep into it today. Again, there'll be another hour on this podcast, and I might have lost 3/4 of you already. I don't know. But, a lot of the conflict within Judaism comes from that, Zionism is a political ideology that was, spearheaded by Theodor Herzl and Jewish Zionism around the turn of the century, the 1900s, late 1800s. Before that, there was a Zionist movement, and there still is, of Christian Zionism. So this whole history, and again, Ilan Pappé has a new book out that deals with the origins of this. I have not read it yet. But it's important to understand that this program, this Zionist program, was underway for many, many years before the Palestinians even knew anything was like this was going on, even before the Jews were involved with colonizing Palestine. At any rate, what I want to get to and tie this all together in making my case here is that it's not that I feel guilty. Some people mistake a sense of guilt with a sense of justice. What I'm looking for is justice. When I was taught never again and told that my great-grandfather, my Grandpa Harold's father, was machine gunned into a ditch by Nazis, that meant to me never again for my black friends, for my Latino friends, for my Asian friends, South Asian friends, for everybody. And now I'm a grandfather, and I still feel the same way. And I'm not going to shut up about it. And I'm going to call out Zionism, because I have nothing in common with Benjamin Netanyahu. I have nothing in common with Itamar Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and Benny Gantz, and you can go from the whole spectrum, left to right. If you're a Zionist and you are occupying the land of Palestinian people and you are proud of it, and even if you're not proud of it, I'm not down with the erasure of indigenous people. And yes, it happened here in the United States, and I'm still not down with it. And people will say, oh, well, Zionists will say, oh, well, you're in the U.S., why don't you just get up and give your house? Well, first of all, I don't own anything, okay? I don't own my home. So when people say that, they're already revealing their bourgeois privilege. They're already revealing their privileged status, that they just assume that you own something, a house or a condominium, and you're going to give up. I don't. I pay a landlord. I've paid landlords my entire life. And I would much rather pay the Potawatomi tribe that had their roots in this region than pay it to whoever I'm paying it to now. Yes, let's give it back to the native people. Let's give Chicago back. Let them run it. You know, for me, it's just a matter of who I'm paying my check to. I'd rather pay it to the native people. So don't give me that BS. You know, Israel's always making excuses, and they're using the most extreme and horrific crimes against humanity to justify what they're doing, like Hiroshima and Nagasaki and Dresden. Like, we're just doing what you did, you know, which is true. But they think it's cool, you know. It's not cool. They learned from their granddaddy, the Brits, England, and their stepdaddy, the United States, since 1967. And, you know, you can't really say much about Israel when you carried out the Vietnam War and the Korean War and war in Iraq twice, Afghanistan, and on and on and on. I mean, we're not going to get into the coups and the military dictatorships and the bombing campaigns of U.S. imperialism, but that is what is behind all of this. So here's a clip I want to show you of how this all ties into one another. Check this out. So here you go.
It's not only is it defensible, it's the only way forward. The only way forward is for the Jewish people to live in their land, to push back on the Palestinian Authority and the Hamas and those entities, to assert sovereignty. So, hold on one second. I'm not American. I was born in Israel. My parents were Russian refusniks. Read the freaking Wikipedia. For God's sakes, I served in the army here and I just came back to the reserves right now. Please do me a favor. Do me a favor. I was born in Haifa. I speak Hebrew and English. You are a Canadian from nowhere. You have nothing to do with anything. All you know is Discordia.
You're a Russian settler, not an American settler.
You're just
stealing Palestinian land.
You're nothing but a talking head on TV. You have nothing to do with this land. You have nothing to do with this place. Keep saying
correct.
it.
I have nothing to do with mass murder and apartheid.
Go back to Canada and your little books behind you. You have nothing to do with this region. You don't speak the languages of this region. You're not from here. You never served here. I spoke to Arabs today.
You're
I
not
am from here.
there
I was born in Haifa, Israel. My parents fought to come to this land from the Russian Soviet regime. And you are just a Canadian sitting out there sniping with your little understandings of things. Go back and read another book.
We have a lot more common ethnically than you do with anybody from that land.
Do me a favor. I am an ethnic Jewish person, which is a Judean from this land.
Listen, I don't want you to carry on.
We have the same DNA as the Arabs. Almost the same language.
Fascinating though it is where you both come from.
You're the same DNA as the.
Look, fascinating though it is. Can we get back to the question, Rabbi Fleischer? I want you to justify the expansion of the settlement.
By the way, he's a rabbi. This pig is a rabbi. Advisor to Ben Gvir, former at least.
At a well.
How do you justify
talking about the future? This guy, he's in Canada.
Rabbi Fleischer, if you may, how do you justify
Arabs at a well in Hebron?
Hang on, please. Can I talk, please?
Destroying it, which is what Israel does.
Please let it go.
Yes, sir.
Rabbi Fleischer, how do you justify the expansion of settlements at this particular time all over the West Bank? I don't
justify it. I laud it. I'm proud of it. I can't be prouder about this government. And finally, we are resettling our land, our small land that pushes back against jihadism. This is correct in terms of
our small little land with nuclear weapons, receiving billions and billions of dollars from the world's largest, most powerful superpower in the history of humanity, and also all the other Western powers, including Germany, France, the UK, and on and on and on. Poor little defenseless Israel and their little land.
Security. It's correct in terms of pushing back on jihad. It is also our legal land that we purchased, that we won in wars, that is our ancestral land. You dig in the dirt, and that's where our history is.
All right, let me ask the same question. Let me ask the same question.
Wait a minute, Piers, hold on. This is the important point. You asked about the future of Gaza. Future of Gaza is the same. Israel's going to govern Gaza. Israel's going to govern it first militarily, then it's going to resettle it. Decent Arabs who are post-jihad, anti-jihad, who are
decent Arabs, according to this pig.
Pro-Israel and want an upward mobility in life. They're going to become residents of this land. They're going to have a future, not under jihad, but under normalization. And the Jewish people are going to live in our tiny land, especially in Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank.
Okay, Jonathan.
In short, he's saying we can steal Palestinian land because God promised it to us.
It's not Palestinian land. It's our land. You just don't know your history.
I'm actually curious. I'm curious what John.
I mean, he just lays it out there, plain as day. That's what these people think. And the ones that don't say it out loud, there's a lot of people who don't say it out loud, but not so much anymore. All of Israel is pretty much delusional and deranged. Although, there's some people starting to come to their senses, maybe. But so this is an example of what this situation at my bar mitzvah led to directly. This guy's parents came. They came to Israel, and now he's one of the biggest pigs in the whole country. And he has no qualms about stealing the Palestinian land in the West Bank. I'm going to leave you guys with a video that I put together for a family that is in Gaza, has been suffering like everybody every day for 9 months now. Beautiful family with 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. And I'm in contact with them. And every day I worry about them being alive. And just like I do with all the people of Gaza, every night pretty much since October 7th, I wake up in the middle of the night between 3 and 5 a.m. I don't get good rest. I don't feel at ease. And I know I'm not alone. And that's part of why I'm doing this podcast as well, is, reach out to people and make community and find people who have empathy, and so we can organize and we can fight for a better future. But here's a message from Lana. She's 12 years old, and she really would like to be in school and not being terrorized and bombed and starved to death. Now, I know you see these videos all over the place. I made one for them as they started to come out on Instagram. And, what kind of world are we living in where people are having genocide committed against them? And don't forget that people of Gaza can't leave. They're encaged, okay? They don't have an air force. They don't have a navy. They don't have a missile defense system. And the Zionists will say, oh, but the Hamas spent all the money on tunnels and they didn't build bomb shelters, so it's not our fault that we've dropped 73,000 tons of explosives on them. But like I said before, these Zionists are depraved and deranged and sadistic and out of their minds, and they need intervention. And they're slaughtering children by the tens of thousands. And they think that's okay. And a lot of you think that's okay because it's people in suits who speak language like you speak with an American accent or a British accent or Australian accent. And they seem believable. They seem respectable. They're not. They're liars. And that goes for Genocide Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken and the whole ghoulish gang. This is genocide. I don't sweep genocide under the rug, and I don't use the term lightly. At any rate, this family is very much in need. If you're able to, please contribute, help them live another day. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and check for episode 3 coming soon, as well as other videos and shorts that I'll be uploading to my channel. Please click like and subscribe if you like the podcast. I'll be having guest interviews and a whole lot of fun stuff. But that is episode 2. Thanks everyone for listening.
أريد أن أوصل رسالتي إلى العالم. أنا الطفلة لانا من غزة الجريحة المدمرة. يا أحرار العالم انقذونا. نناشدكم أن تقفوا بجانبنا. نحن في غزة نموت من هذا العدوان الغاشم الذي لا يرحم صغيرا ولا كبيرا. الموت يلاحقنا في كل مكان. لقد لقد تركت منزلي وألعابي، والآن أجلس في خيمة من نايلون لا تحميني من حرارة الشمس ولا من صواريخ الطائرات. كل مرة يقول لنا أنه آمن، يقول لنا اذهب إلى هذا المكان إنه آمن، لكن لا يكون المكان آمن. نزحت أنا وعائلتي 4 مرات من مكان إلى مكان، وكل مرة ننجب عجوبة. أصوات القصف مرعبة ومخيفة، ننام على أصوات الطائرات وأصوات القصف والاستهداف، نستيقظ على الأصوات المرعبة المخيفة التي تزلزل قلوبنا وتزلزل الأرض من تحتنا. نحن أطفال غزة نموت من الجوع، لا طعام لدينا، أصبحت أجسادنا هزيلة وضعيفة. لم نعد نأكل الطعام الذي كنت أحبه ولا الشراب النظيف. أرواحنا سحقت، أجسادنا تعبت. أنقذونا من هذه الإبادة والظلم والحرمان والخوف. أناشدكم يا أحرار العالم، ساعدونا. أناديكم، أشد على أياديكم وأبوس الأرض تحت نعالكم، وأقول أفديكم وأهديكم ضياء عيني ودفء القلب أعطيكم. فمأساتي التي أحيا نصيبي من مآسيكم. حملت دمها على كفي وما نكست أعلامي، وصنت العشب فوق قبور أسلافي. وأناديكم وأشد على أياديكم.